Look, I'm James Moynihan. I'm a homeschool liaison in Great Colostre. It's a deaf school, mixed deaf school, secondary school on the north side of Cork City. I've had 5 years of being a homeschool liaison. By training and by inclination, I'm an English and history teacher, and I did the course. I just found it a really tantalising opportunity to really expand my skill set in terms of thinking. I think from the very start, it looked to chime with a lot of ideas I had in terms of, perspective, in terms of creativity, in terms of identity. So what I've seen in the last number of years in education, particularly in my last 5 years as a homeschool liaison out in the community, and which is the community I'm from, and of course with the added factor of COVID, I really think that it's time to change perspectives, which is probably a good way to describe the course. And I do think that this course was a great opportunity to put some very interesting and challenging shape on that.
And I love that idea of challenging the perspective, James. And I've heard you say that on a number of occasions. So why is it so important to change perspective? And I know I also hear you talking about the generations, the different generations. I've heard you talk about, the generation ahead of us, our own generation, the generation behind us. Why is it so important to be changing perspectives, do you think?
Well, I think, look, I would deal a lot with people who perhaps be under pressure. They could be people who suffer, are experiencing challenges academically, emotionally, socioeconomically, even in terms of their mental health. And I think in my view, one of the biggest problems is a narrowing of perspective. Daniel Kahneman calls it the what you see is all there is fallacy, which is incredibly important. That what you have is, I think I said it in the first week of the course, one of the things I hate more than anything else is the argument from tradition. This is what we'll always do because this is what we've always done. And I think, there's is it Lietka on the course talks about performance scripts as well. These things kind of really bounced off the synapses. I think that people simply accept that what has occurred to them and with them will always be the way. I mean, we've spoken about the idea of the elephant being marooned by the tiny stake, having taught itself that it can't break free. In my view, I think every human being has nearly unlimited potential, not going the Hallmark card route, but I have seen people do extraordinary things. On both ends of the spectrum, be capable of extraordinary creativity, and I think creativity is where it's going to come from, but also capable of extraordinary self-defeat. So I do think that there's a significant problem in how we understand our potential, especially in how we understand the range of options available to us. And working in education, if you can get someone to change how they think, that's going to be a revolutionary step. I felt that perspective is the great prison. There's a way back doing English in college, I read a brilliant book called The Prison House of Language by Frederick Jameson, that how we perceive ourselves is an incredibly powerful prison.
How does this tie into your project?
If I could change how people view themselves, how they view the world, and open up new possibilities. Naturally, through it felt like ceaseless iterations, which is the job. It ended up in me writing 7 short stories, and each one of the short stories, and initially aimed at primary school kids across the spectrum of primary school up and down. And each of these short stories had at its foundation one of these, what I call them, the 7 samurai. I won't go through them all, but just for example, empathy, reframing, jobs to be done, persona, and so on and so forth. My first story, just to very quickly go through it, was about that concept of reframing, where I don't specify the color of the skin. A child's skin changes color during the night, almost like Kafka. Don't explain it, just let it happen. And the extraordinary bizarre experience this child has interacting with with everyone else in his environment because his skin has changed color. And that's a very simple concept of let's flip this around, let's reframe it, let's look at the journey and what we learn from it. And I think, but like if you look at something like a persona, for a young person to understand, which of course is tied in with empathy as well, of course, to understand the needs and the requirements and the potential and the capacity of another person. Like no poor treatment survives the understanding that the other person is an individual of dignity. If you can understand that this person over here across from me has their own requirements, we must deal with them. One of these short stories, and what would grow out of it, would it be a curriculum of response? You can't be too prescriptive on the curriculum because it does kind of defeat the purpose.
And James, can I ask you, so like I was really intrigued by these 7 stories and sort of 7 fundamental stories, and that obviously, let's say kids, children can hear these stories. What do you then encourage? Do you encourage them that they discuss it as a group, or that they'd reflect on it as an individual, or
Yeah.
they'd reflect on it with a teacher? How does it work?
I had a highly theoretical um, artifact, but then what happened with the sprint in the wild with the kids? They wanted to do all different things. They wanted to draw the shark. They wanted to tell the shark's life story. One of them wrote a letter home from the shark about the shark's experience of talking to the kids. Right. The idea was that it became very clear to me that if it's a creative artifact, the response would have to be, or would ideally be, creative. That's what it worked out as. People would have to respond. And luckily, and because children will keep you honest, there's no filter there. And what they wanted was more, more, and more. But the concept was you needed to have a collection, you needed to give variety, right? You needed to mix things up, you needed to give them something that would divert them, that would entertain them. And those 7, I felt those 7 in particular really captured the rigorous process of design thinking. For me, working in school, reframing has been the most important thing. Working with young people under stress, reframing by like breaking open like these notional walls, these notional boundaries of a problem is the single most important thing. And I'll give an example. Some teachers would say, geez, why is that fella out of school so often? And my response would be, why does he come in at all? Look at the experience he has.
Powerful. And James, it's been very obvious to me you yourself have been on a journey during this program, and I know there's others will be watching this who are maybe also considering joining this program. Would you have any advice for them? Any suggestions? Especially, you've been working while doing this program as well. Others might be thinking something similar. Any advice for them that might help?
But I know from dealing with colleagues, it is a commitment. But my advice to people would definitely do it and put all ego at the door. All right. Like, this is nothing that you've done before. Some of you may have done something that you feel is similar. It's not. Okay. And once you're comfortable, I mean, one of the ideas I try and get across here with the kids is that in life, sooner or later, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's nearly, should be from day one of the course. That was the idea. That like this is a challenge, and I do think people initially struggle with that by virtue of their capacity. I think a lot of the people that do this course are, and certainly in our group, I was taken aback by the talent and the energy and the generosity of spirit of the people. I was on this course with really, really talented people, but initially that's a double-edged sword because very talented people are used to doing very well. And when they don't do very well, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with this course? I'm not saying people said that too much, but like the idea that I'm top of my game here. People are saying maybe to themselves. So when this is not coming so easy, and why should it? It's totally new. Then that's a problem. So, but like I'm sorry, that's part of the fun.
Yeah, and I love the idea, James, regardless of who we are coming in and whether we and others see ourselves as top or bottom or middle, it doesn't matter. This is a new experience where you really maximize that experience by opening yourself to how others think. And as a result of that, everyone emerges and learns something new about themselves and gets to a new level. And I really like that.
It's Like Paddy, it's, I would liken it to bringing 10, 16-year-olds into a class that had never met each other before. No one knows anyone else. Everyone's going to be embarrassed. No one wants to show weakness. And then after a week, everyone just chills out and we
That's
work
it. Yeah.
together. I'm not calling my contemporary teenagers, but because they were a fantastic group. I mean, we did it together. You know what I mean? And that's you know that's the beauty of it, not the challenge. The amount of work we got through. I certainly couldn't have done it without my colleagues,
No,
my
and
friends.
I heard you refer to a generosity of spirit, which I think James captures it very well. Though this idea of by working together, we become better together, but we also, as a result, become better as individuals, and that generosity of spirit. James, I really want to thank you because I could listen to you forever, and I know we will meet up, touch wood shortly, and I really like to thank you for the effort during the program and the help you've given to others on the program, but also the fact that you've turned up here today to share your insights. I think it says a lot about you, the way you see the world, etc. Gur míle mágad,
Me
James.
too, buddy.